Okay, so I'll just introduce myself. So I'm not sure that I know many people here, but I've seen names already in that guest list of people in Slug that are really active. And so, like, thank you for all your contribution to community. Um, so I'm Cath Kirkland and I work at Digital Fusion in Christchurch, New Zealand. We're a team of about 21 developers and we work across New Zealand and Australia. Um, so a lot of my clients at the moment are Australia based, but that kind of swings and roundabouts. I've worked with Digital Fusion and as a FileMaker developer for 23 years. So that's a reasonable time. And my friends are always, like, how do you work there so long? And really, I mean, the secret is my boss. Like, Craig is just phenomenal. Craig Saunders is the boss there. He's a great boss. He creates a great work environment for everybody, and the work we do just ticks so many boxes for me. So I love the fact that we get to learn all about people's businesses. They're usually something a bit different. And also I love that we just keep learning. Like, there's so much to learn all the time. So that's really kind of what's kept me interested and kept me in it for so long now. So Claris FileMaker, dream the dream, it's all possible. So this is my mantra, and this is what I'll say to people when I first start working with them, because honestly, like, it's been such a long time that we've said, no, we can't do that in FileMaker. Really, it's about people like bringing their hopes and dreams to us, well, at least their business ones, and us being able to work with them to kind of solve those problems. So like, I understand all you are into integrations probably as much as what we are, and just feel like that the world is your oyster then. Like, it's why not use the power of all those other apps when we can kind of borrow from that and use that and then make FileMaker look really good. Um, so I think that, we're so well placed in FileMaker to use the power of all those other apps. And, you know, and and it was really interesting, like, going to Engage, because the keynote, which is it's been released now, um, started to kind of talk about a lot of the things that, the language that they're using now is kind of the language that we feel as developers we've been using for a while. So, I was really kind of feeling closely aligned with what they're saying now. Um, so one of the things that they said, and I don't know if anyone else loves this tagline or not, but I probably heard it middle of last year. And when I did, workplace operating system, it was in some of Claris's marketing. And I just connected with that really quickly. And I thought that is exactly what we offer these days. It's not just a database, it's actually something that encompasses a lot more for people than what we used to be able to offer. So, workplace operating system, I feel like that really kind of sums up what we can offer these days. So I love that term. I was pleased to see them using it quite a bit in the keynote. I think that, that's where we're heading now with Claris FileMaker. And we should, because there's so many apps out there that are doing such wonderful things that it really is a bit of a disservice if you're not using or pulling in the power of those apps for your users. Another term that they were tossing around, and I don't know if maybe this has just become more popular in tech or something, but data silo is, kind of, if you're not using those integrations, then this is potentially where you could be heading with your clients. And employers have reported losing nearly 12 hours per week searching for information across disparate systems. So that's a lot of time. 12 hours per week, that's like that, that's more than a day's work. And, us as FileMaker developers, we can see these opportunities, we can see data, and we know data, and it's close to our hearts. And so it's really frustrating to see people lose so much time of, problems that we can solve for them. So, it's a lot of time, be the hero and help them get that time back. Yeah, so over the last 3 years, I've been on a bit of a journey, I would say. It started through COVID, and been on with this one client in particular, and they really pushed the envelope in terms of what we can achieve with integrations. So that company is the Mobile Tyre Shop, and the person that I work most directly with there is Jamie Cartwright. And so him and I together have been able to work as a team to be able to work in a lot of these integrations and work out how that's going to work for them. And we're really privileged to win last year the Claris Development Excellence Awards for the solution. So that's been a bit of a lifelong goal for me. So yay, bucket list. Yeah, we're really, really proud of the achievement. But really proud of kind of the success that it's created for their business and to help them be able to achieve what their goals are. So I'll just quickly a little background on them. They sell tires, and their point of difference is that they will fit them at your home or your workplace of choice. So it's a simple concept, but simple, is complicated to deliver. So I want to talk a little bit about the approaches that we took to solving some of the problems. So we're always in the forefront of our minds is how do we integrate for delight? That delight factor, like how can you make people really happy? And so commonly what we get asked all the time, and I'm sure you've heard it too, is just make this easy to use, and I think now I understand what that means for people, because that's a simple phrase, but it means so much to different people. But in my mind, I think that means just make that do what I want it to do and no more. Like that's where we have the advantage over SAS products, because they have to offer so much more. Whereas we can just do this, we can simplify it to work for how they want it, therefore creating easy to use solutions. The next point is reduce data entry. So this was a real eye-opener for me. Like, I hadn't really thought about this as something that I wanted to achieve on a daily basis up until this point. But nobody wants to enter data. It's a real pain. It's not well, a lot of people don't like to enter data. And they shouldn't have to. Like, if that data already exists other places, then why are we rebuilding the wheel, reinventing the wheel? Okay, we also always try to solve a problem. And we always try to create a superior experience. So that always starts with, what is the expectation here? Like, how, before we even start to write any code, it's how is the users going to use this, and what do they expect that this will look like for them? And then above everything, it's got to be worth the cost and the effort. So yes, you'll have to make compromises, because it's got to be worth, you can't, there's just not an unlimited budget out there for everything. Okay, so let's start by looking at some of the examples. And the first example I want to look at is team communication. So let's look at the problems that they had for a start. They had their staff were using multiple platforms for recording any information about jobs. So they were using MS Teams and Excel to communicate the job information. People work out their own ways for solving their own problems, but it's not going to necessarily be the best problem for the whole company. And so that's what they had found. They'd used the tools that they had at hand and were able to, solve the problem for themselves, but not necessarily others. That having that information siloed in these different sources meant that the decision making was compromised. That information wasn't available at the time that they were making those decisions, and follow up on all of those issues was pretty problematic. So as FileMaker developers, we would the most simple answer for this is to create a table of dossier of correspondence records and notes records, and that's where you would record all that. But look at this portal here. Like, this is basic implementation of a portal. It's got all the data on there. It's got a note, who created it, and the time and the date. But really it's lacking in quite a few things there. Like, for example, note 3, you can't tell from there, but that message is actually cropped, so it doesn't show all of the note. You can't also really get a feel for who's interacting there, like where did those messages come from? And so it's not a great experience. So we flipped this on its head and wanted to answer that question: what do people expect this to look like? And the expectation is more like something that everybody is familiar with a messaging app. And so, like, we started from that point. Okay, how are we going to make these notes look like a messaging app? And in this case, like, it was actually well, you can see there, for example, there's a lot of detail that's improved there. You can tell who wrote those messages. There's an infinite amount of space for the messages. And it's quite clear at a glance, like, that this is a conversation between two people or two entities. So how do we do this? And this was really just, so the top and the bottom parts of it is all FileMaker, and then the display of the messages is a web viewer. So technically it's not that challenging, but it creates like a massive superior user experience. And so it was really interesting, because once we put this in place and this kind of worked well for them, then we decided to expand on that. And it kind of became the central messaging system for the whole solution. And it was great, because once we had that tool in place, then we could use it for things like, if tires come into the warehouse and then we can notify on that job to say this job is ready to be scheduled to its next stage. It just gave us the tools to be able to communicate from the system to the users on jobs and work in a good workflow for them. So I haven't gone into in here how we did it, but there is a blog article written by Weet-Bix Daniel Wood, who also works at Digital Fusion, and feel free to download his example file. He's gone into a lot of work there to show you how you can customize that and copy and paste in the code and what you need to set up there. So the next one I want to talk about is paying suppliers. So this is about, they've purchased the tires and from a lot of different tire manufacturers, and then they need to pay those invoices. So Jamie identified this as an internal problem. It was a problem because only one or two people could explain how they were doing it. It meant that they would have to leave their seats and walk around the place to find out some of the details they needed to know before they paid the invoices. And so it was a complex manual workflow. There's a lot of data entry. And they wanted to know a couple of things. Have they received the goods? How much did they pay? And then they want it to be tidy, and they integrate with Xero. And so Xero does a really good job of storing the documents. So that was part of the transparency that we wanted to create, was to store those documents in Xero as our endpoint. So our workflow had to do a couple of things. It had to let them know, it had to remove the data entry, had to let them know if we have received the tyres, and it also had to record how much we'd paid for those tyres with the document and store the documents. So when we looked at the options, we could have gone out to all the suppliers and asked them to provide us an API so that we could work with their supplier invoices. And that just seemed really difficult now, but in full circle, that's what we're doing now. So we've kind of conquered the low-hanging fruit, and now we're going for the harder stuff. So, but this wasn't what we chose to do for a start. So we chose to do something different. And the options on the table were, at the time, was OCR. Now there's AI, but like we're going back like 3 years, so AI wasn't really even around at the time. So I would definitely consider it now, but optical character recognition, OCR, is what we implemented here. So this was pretty mind-blowing for me, because when Jamie asked me to do it, I had no idea really. I'd heard of OCR, I'd never used it, didn't really know what it was about, thought it sounded complicated. And then I actually went onto the website and I tried it, and I was blown away. Like, it was just the best thing ever. I thought, we've definitely got to use this in your solution, because it was quite magical, really, to just drag and drop a PDF into a website and then pull back all of the JSON. So I just loved it, because like, how much work would that take for you to be able to create that yourself? And that's one of the wonderful things about integrations, is that you don't have to do the work, you just get all the glory. So there was a lot of different companies that provide OCR, and we went with verify.com. And the reason we chose this one over others was that this gave you a standardized version of the JSON. So it didn't matter if your invoice number was invoice no, or invoice number, or invoice. It's still the JSON element always came back as a standardized element. So I thought that really took a lot of the work away from my side of it. And so the interpretation, that type of thing, was way less. Like, if you were dealing with less suppliers that had a standardized invoice, then that's probably quite a good option. Some of the other suppliers, other OCR companies. However, this was the one that we went with. So I'll show you how it ended up looking once we had integrated it in with FileMaker. So this is the start process of them dealing with a supplier invoice. So all we've got here is a container field. Basically, they'll drag and drop their PDF into the container field. And here's an example of one that's been processed. So we've dropped it into the container field. It's gone to verify. It's brought back the JSON, and I pulled that out and put that into different fields. So now that that's in the fields, that's workable information for us. So we can then query our system with using native FileMaker tools to find out, is that PO, has that PO tires been received into the warehouse? So we've used our reference number from the PO, which Verify pulled out. We've searched here and we can find that, yes, there is a PO that matches that. The status on that's fully received. And these were the items. There was 4 tires on this PO. And that was the total number was the expected $561 was expected. And then $561 was the number that was pulled out of that supplier's invoice. So that's a definite match. And all that we need to do is click continue here. And this has raised a bill in FileMaker. So this has gone off. And technically what this has done is it's found the PO. It's got all the information from the PO because that has the decent information that we know about the items on the PO. So we can match that back to the stock. And so there's a lot of that manual process, which meant that the accounts person would be walking around trying to find job sheets, trying to find if tires have been received or not. It's all in the system anyway. So we could pull it all through and just give them an interface for being able to see all that. And then that document down in the bottom right-hand corner is the invoice that they dragged and dropped at the beginning. And then in this case, they would click send to 0, and that would push that all to 0, including the document. So really, like, it's not many clicks. Like, you drop the PDF into the container, click continue. If there's a match, click continue, and then send to 0. So we managed to get it down to 3 clicks, which still has a lot of user interpretation in it. But no data entry. So that was a bit of a win as far as like transforming their process to what it had been into something new. So I've written a blog on this, and this is on our website as well. There is a slide at the end which there's a code which will take you to a web page on our website, and that has a link to all of these. So if you're interested in any of them, you could probably just snapshot the QR code at the end, and that will give you the ability to find all these blog articles. Okay, so the next one is customer contact. So this one here, customer contact. So there's 2 sides to their work, to the app, really. There is the desktop version, which the office staff use, and then there is on the road, where the techs have they've used FileMaker Go, and we're just in the process of doing the SDK on that now for a better experience. But at this time, they're using FileMaker Go, and they wanted to be able to tell the customers when the techs were arriving. And so what happens with them is when you purchase your tires, you book into a booking slot window. And so you're not allocated at a particular time. It's just a range of time within 2 hours. And so that meant that people don't know exactly when the tech is going to be there. And that created kind of this feeling that that they were uninformed. And it also helped from MTS's point of view that if somebody knows that they're going to have a tech turn up at their place in 15 minutes, then they can make sure that the car is parked in the right place. And so it helps smooth out the process of the job. So we wanted to kind of solve these problems of like basically customers just feeling uninformed and no communication, and it feeling a little bit unprofessional. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to be able to say, okay, we're coming to your place next and we're going to be so many minutes away. So what we did do is we used Google Maps to work out the travel time between their current location and the next job. And in this case, it says that it's 10 minutes away. So now that we know it's 10 minutes away, we can now use that number to create a text message to the customer. And in this case, it says, hi, Cath, just letting you know I'm en route. Google Maps suggested I'm 10 minutes away. Regards, Jamie, your tire technician. So in this case, the tech hasn't had to type in any message. They haven't had to work out anything about the travel time or anything like that. That's just been a couple of clicks for them to be able to message the customer. So the upside of handling all of that in the app means that we can track and make sure that they did actually contact that customer. So that gives us some clarity for the office staff as well. And so we just record, you can look at the timeline on this job, and this looks like a standard kind of job format to me. They text them on the way, then they've started the job, then they finish the job, and they've called the customer afterwards. They don't always call the customer. The customer's quite often on site anyway, but that meant that we can just handle that process. And there was a lot of tick boxes that we could tick by enabling that automatic text messaging. So for this, we had to integrate with Google Maps. We had to do Google address validation, and we had to use a text messaging service. So for a simple thing, there was 3 integrations here, but I'll show you at the end the Google Maps stuff that we're doing. So we were already doing 2 of these things, which was the Google address validation, and messaging to the customers and stuff like that is a central part of their communication anyway. So I've done a blog article on this, and this is an example of the demo file using Google Maps. And so, like, I found it was so clever that you could just pass a different parameter to it, and it would show you the different modes of transport. So in this example, somebody is trying to get from the Metropolitan Museum of Art to Times Square. So Google's estimated it's going to take 40 minutes to walk. We change the mode to bus, public transport. It is 28 minutes, 13 minutes in a car, and 12 minutes to bike. So best option. Be a nice bike ride too. Yes, so here is a link to the Google Maps example file there. So this is a shout out to DB Services, because there is, I don't know if anyone here is from there, but I always seem to get so many example files from them. They're a great source of technical articles, and always kind of Google's or ChatGPT, I suppose these days now, but is always the first port of call when doing anything new. And so it's great that other people are sharing what they've done. And I know Portage Bay are great sharers and everything as well, and a lot of you in the community are too. So thanks for everyone that's really putting resources out there, because I think it helps us all. And at the end of the day, I don't feel like we are all competing with each other. I feel like we're all competing with the other software that's out there. If we can all lift up our game for FileMaker, that makes them look good, and then other people will will start using it and be able to enjoy what we see. So this is just, I was just alluded before about how we were using Google Maps, and we've gone deep with them because we've built this scheduler, job scheduler, and this is not something that I've shown before because it's not a simple integration. Like this is really quite difficult. And there's no blog article to show you how to do it, but we've got an amazing developer that I work with, Stephen Baker. He's our in-house magician, and he's done a lot with Google Maps on a lot of different projects, and so this is in his realm of expertise. And so really, this was another example of how we didn't go fully to the nth degree on it. We had to rein back and do what was in budget, and what was achievable, but still gave them a good solution. So in this case, this is showing the day starts off with white markers, meaning that they're unallocated jobs. And then a scheduler will be able to pick the points that are within which create a logical route for the van. And there's clues that we put on there to help them schedule, like the time slot windows are all indicated on there. We have flexible jobs now where people will get a discount if they say you can come anytime today. So that helps the schedulers to be able to fill the gaps in the schedule. And they've really been able to stay agile by only scheduling the jobs on the day. And that means that they can put in the efficiencies of route scheduling, which Jamie and I sat in and learned all about a lot of other software services that did full-on scheduling, and it's really interesting, and there's a lot of really neat stuff you can do. But I mean, in the end, we learned from that and decided that what we were presenting here was enough to help them kind of do what they needed to do. So that's our main integration with Google Maps here. The phone integration is the next one that I want to talk about. So with this one, we integrated with 3 different things. We integrated with RingCentral, Delacon, and Google Analytics. So RingCentral and Delacon but they're both of them are phone integrations, and they do slightly different things. So RingCentral is really good for call management, and they run a call center as well as take orders over the phone. So that's great for managing the calls, whereas Delacon is a really good website call analytics software. So it's really powerful in terms of the data that these 2 systems can provide. And because they are so heavily invested in Google Analytics on their website, what they were finding was they were calls, so sales that were happening on the website will go through to completion, and then they will get logged in their Google Analytics as a positive sale. But what could happen is somebody could start on the website and then give up halfway through, call the call center, and finish the sale there. So from the website's point of view, we still wanted to know that person had started on the website and that had actually resulted in a positive sale. So we feed back to Google Analytics when we can determine that sale started from the website and was successful. That was one thing that we wanted to achieve with the phone integration. But the other thing that we wanted to achieve was just a better experience for the call center. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to give them as much information about that customer calling as we could. So there's a lot of information that those two services do give us. And so it was about making that available to the users as well. So in this case, an incoming call came in, it's from this number, and it's likely from this person at this in this area. So some of that information is cell phone towers, and the fact that we've been able to link that phone number to one that already exists in the database means that we've already got a relationship with them. And so the tone of that, or the content of that call is completely different than a new sales lead. So it's likely this person is following up on their job. So we do things to kind of shortcut that. We want to be able to find their contact card straight away. And then when they get there, we want to be able to present that information to the call center as soon as they can about what their current job is. So here's another example of a new customer. So that's the cell phone tower, Parramatta, Sydney, and the phone number. So it's not really, that hasn't linked to anybody, but if they answer that, that will create a new contact record as soon as they do. And it auto-fills the phone number because that's the information that we've got. And then it's up to that person to just fill in as much details as they can about it, like whether it's their first name or their last name, so that they can kind of then have that ongoing history with this person. So things don't always work out the best way the first time you develop them. And this was something that we've kind of iterated on. This call notification was a pop-up, and it was a great, awesome technique. But it didn't work for us in this case, because what would happen is somebody would be in a quote or a job, whatever, and then this call would pop up, and it pops up as a window in FileMaker, and it took them out of the context that they were using. And so it was kind of very disruptive, really, to have it going if you were working in the system, which mostly they were. So this is a case of, like we put this in and then we just had to make changes and everything when we realized it didn't work that well. And so what we did was we changed it to a portal. And so down in the bottom right-hand corner now is where the incoming calls come in, and it's far more passive. So if they're answering call, they have this dashboard open most of the time. And so they'll just see the calls coming in here. And so that as a workflow works for them much better than what it did. Some of the search terms. So we get two webhooks. We get one from Ring Central and one from Delegon. That has a lot of information in it. So the search terms are all part of that information. And so we also put this up on the screen when people are creating new quotes. And so this also helps shape the conversation, because if somebody is purchasing MTS budget tires, it could be a different conversation than if someone is purchasing Pirelli tires. So really that's just about showing what the information we've got. We can also tell where that call came from. So that also helps. It's just extra information. You can see the tire size in there. So sometimes in the pages that it's come from. So another one from DB Services, that was the starting point for our Ring Central integration. So thank you to them. The next one that I want to talk about is security. So this is vetting credit cards. And I haven't talked about this one before either, but it was so interesting for me to find out what goes on behind the scenes about some of these things. And so when I was talking to Brendan about presenting, I should talk about count, because count is a really interesting idea, I guess. So the problem is that there is so much credit card fraud, and these guys are online retailers, and so they get targeted a lot of the times. And you would think that these techs are turning up to these houses and fitting tires. So, like, who would be usually using a fraudulent credit card? It happens heaps because then they get the tires on the cars and then they can take off the tires and sell them independently. And they're really high value purchase. And so in Australia, it's really difficult as the retailer. You do not have very good options for fighting it with the banks. So they were quite none of what you think would be common sense doesn't necessarily apply. They don't share information. So if one bank knows that it's a fraudulent credit card, another bank may not. And also if somebody will challenge a purchase and say, I never ordered this, then the retailer has to pay back that money to the bank. And so it doesn't matter if that was a legit purchase or not. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on financially, which really was quite shocking to me because it just seems so unfair from the retailer's point of view. So the banks, at this point in time, and I actually do believe in the last couple of years they've got much, much better at this. But at this point in time, when we did this integration, they weren't really addressing the fraudulent credit card use very well. So Jamie looked at another option, which was a company called Count, and they detect fraud. So the way that they work is basically they have all of these retailers that supply them information on every transaction that goes on. And so this is hundreds of thousands of transactions, millions of transactions a day. And so they are basically getting their own database of transactions. And there's a bit of information that they get along with that. So they get things like the IP number, they get the country of purchase, they get the email address, that kind of thing. And so if there is a chargeback on that card, which means somebody has challenged that purchase, that is also recorded here. So this is a central source for transactions for companies that subscribe to this company. So it can tell you things like, it will flag every single transaction and it will score it to say, is this high risk or not? And so it will look at and see, is this person on a VPN? Because that's a flag that they could be doing something dodgy. What's their browser? If they're on Thor browser, could be dodgy. Is this purchase outside of the country of origin? How old is the email address? This was an interesting one. Like, they can't go back and find out when your email address was created, but they can find out when was the first time they saw that email address, and other chargebacks and reviews. So they've got all of this information, and so they give you back a score after every single transaction. So what do we do with it? Like, once those transactions get a score, it also gets, Jamie decided what that level was that we were going to review afterwards. And so now the transactions get a score. If it's a high score, it gets a response R, which is review. And that means that transaction is under review. Doesn't mean it's fraudulent. In fact, most of them aren't, but all that means is that there was enough red flags to make it seem like it could be. And then we automatically create a checklist item, which is things that the office staff can add to a job, which a tech needs to do when they're on site. So in this case, it has they have received a low security score for the payment, what we want to do is we want to do things like we want to check and make sure that that credit card matches the ID of the person. So all that we will do now is we put this on the job, and then they are asked to check the ID when they get to the job. So that alone has saved them a lot of money just through not by default installing tires on these jobs. Okay, so the last one that I want to touch on is AI. And it was AI to improve professionalism. So of course, Jamie wanted to be able to put this into his system because it was new and shiny, but definitely needed to find a problem like an actual problem that it was going to solve. So we looked at this, and Jamie came out with this idea of so the problem is that texting is a big part of the way that they communicate with their customers. And yes, we have templates so they can choose all those, but they can also free text in anything and send that to a customer. And quite often that wasn't resulting in the best message outcome. It didn't really reflect like the tone that the company was using. And sometimes they could be quite confusing and unprofessional. So we wondered about what we would do, how we could use AI to help us improve this. So what we did was we wanted to submit this to OpenAI to provide some alternatives for the message that they sent to the customers. And this was to align with the company tone. So on the left, you can see the initial text. So they're composing the text. Here's the message. If you read it, it's a little bit confused. It's not too bad, but a couple of spelling mistakes. And then instead of sending that straight to the to text messaging gateway, we basically send it to OpenAI, get 3 responses back, and the responses are the prompt is said, please, give us 3 alternatives with these particular tones. And so we've set up the tones as settings, and so they can go in and change them if they find that one's not working that well. They're always picking an alternative, and then they can send that. So that was an example of how they were able to use AI to solve a real world problem. So I've done a blog article on this, and you can download that. That uses the original AI with OpenAI. So I know that there's stuff coming down the line from FileMaker, and so you won't need to use those techniques anymore, but it's still up there as a reference. And so all of the examples that I have linked to today, this QR code goes to our website, and feel free to download those. Those are free resources, and you can have a play. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean it's a little snapshot into what we've been doing. But like I love finding out about what other people are doing as well. And so that's why I'm quite keen to show what we've been doing. And I think you can learn a lot from other people. So I'd love to see what everyone else is doing too. I love that idea. But I am thinking about using something really similar to be able to open not into FileMaker, but open into WebDirect some of our features, because some of the things like when they're managing the availability is really slow in on desktop, but it's great on WebDirect. And so I'm kind of thinking about using some of those links and stuff like that to be able to open up into WebDirect. So yeah, similar thing here, but not quite as you're putting it. But I love that technique. That would be a good thing to be able to add.
I had wondered about how you have that conversation with your client about the iterative stages, about we're not gonna spend 2 years getting it perfect. We're gonna do what we think is gonna work and get it going and try it. And then even the realization like, oh, that didn't work well at all. Now we're gonna fix it. How do you have those conversations to start with?
Well, we did start, this project was a little bit different for me because we started with small chunks and worked on those and iterated really quickly.
Mm,
And so we basically just, Jamie and I just worked together really closely over those things. And then he was able to kind of field back that feedback to me really quickly. And so that meant that we could put changes in place. And it didn't mean we had to get things perfect first time
mm,
around. But he was able to be there on the ground and, like it was interesting. He's in Melbourne, I'm in Christchurch. And so I really missed being able to go on site and see that for myself. But working with somebody like him, it was really easy to be able to rely on him to get that feedback. And he was also able to prioritize that feedback for me as well,
mm.
because he could see the bigger picture there. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I'm definitely now a fan. Not all our projects go this way, but some of them do. Of like small chunks, like give it, just manageable, get it out there quick. Um, Instead of sitting on development that could take a couple of years before
Mhm,
it's in front of users, because
mhm,
I think then you get good stuff straight away rather than that longer time frame of you get everything and then you get the iterations on top of that.